Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ward 4 Town Hall style meeting. I'm Councilman Robert Deming, and I appreciate you being here. I have members of the administration here ready to give you updates and answer questions you may have. We have members from the Department of Engineering, Department of Public and Recreation, Community Development, the Police Department, and the Fire Department. I'll give a brief update about what we've got going on in the ward, some things in the ward. They'll expand on some of those ideas, and we'll all take questions at the end. I think that we should expect to be here for maybe an hour or an hour and a half. Feel free to stay after and ask more questions if you'd like, or leave early if you get bored. I'll start with myself. Ward 4 has expanded a little bit. After the 2020 census, we had to rezone and redistrict the lines. So we've added new areas in, a little bit on the northern portion of Pops Ferry over to the east, and, well, Pops Ferry doesn't go north, it kind of veers off, and we added some east and west. How does Pops Ferry starts north and south and goes to east and west? So the areas near Taylor Oaks, Lauren Falls, and that area, Campbell Lane, that's all added into Ward 4 now, so welcome. If any of you are here from those new neighborhoods, I appreciate you coming and participating in this. There have been a lot of events here recently in the city of Biloxi, development, a lot of development that's going on that Jerry can touch on, and then some hot button subjects like spring break events. Now I know we're working with the city and specifically the police department to try to formulate a resolution for the crime and the events that occurred. Now I know it's a very tough subject to deal with, and we don't know how to resolve the issue. I mean, they're visitors to the city when we have to resolve the crime that ensues when we mix alcohol, young people, and lack of supervision. I think my approach to it is add more police officers, make sure everybody can enjoy and have a good time. I don't know that there is a perfect solution. I don't know how to address this, but we're working in concert with cities like Atlanta that have dealt with these types of events, spring break cities in Florida, Alabama, and other areas to make sure that we can have the safest environment for the residents, most importantly, and visitors to our city, as well as the economic impact to businesses, both positive and negative. Discussing that topic, I think a good time would be to start with Assistant Chief Debach. Not really to discuss that topic alone, but allow him to tell you what's going on in the city as far as a crime update, where we're at with the department, hurricane preparedness, and different things like that. Assistant Chief Debach.
Good evening. How's everybody doing? Good. Everybody get one of these handouts? Okay. I'm going to start with that first. Did you get one? Okay. They're coming. They're making their way around. But if you look at it, on the front of it, there's a heat map on the front, and it's got some incidents by crime category. So specifically about Ward 4, over the past 90 days, there was about 1,058 calls for service. And of those, about 108 incident reports, 145 total offenses. So when you look at, we'll say major stuff like burglaries and all that kind of stuff, it's not too bad. You know, you're sitting around one or two reports for those 90 days. Yes, sir. Oh. Okay. So it's not too bad. You know, crime-wise in your ward, it's looking pretty good. The most was some drug violations, and then some trespassing. When we talk about trespassing, you know, some of that's going to kind of segue into the next thing I'm going to talk about, which is like homeless and panhandling. There has been an increase over the years with homeless and panhandling, and one of the things that we're doing, working with the city of Gulfport, is a better way to give campaign. And to kind of give you a brief overview of what that's going to be, which it starts June 1st. We're hanging up signs. What we did was we identified main areas where we get a lot of complaints within the city. I'll tell you those areas, but every one of us can say, you know, there's 50 more areas that we see panhandlers. completely understandable. But what we want to do is start and target the main areas, which is between Maine and Porter, all the way up to Howard, even the Judge Sequel Shell, and then in the West Biloxi around the mall, Edgewater Village, Walmart, up to the shopping center there at Eisenhower and Pass. Places like Walgreens at Pops and Pass, definitely a problem. That would be phase 2 once we expand out and get more signs out. What the sign's going to be is better way to give. It'll have a little text to give number, brings you to a website to kind of explain the program more, as well as where the money's going. Initially, there is a board that's set up to collect the funds and give them out basically, but they're going to be used for first responders initially, and it's for emergency situations only. So a good example would be, a mother and her 2 kids sleeping in a car, something like that. An officer's out there, it's after business hours, so places like Open Doors or Back Bay Mission or whatever's closed. They can help the person with a voucher, not give them money, with a voucher to put them up in a hotel for a few nights. Their information is then given to Open Doors or one of the other places for a long-term solution for that family or that emergency situation. So it's not for everybody that needs a hamburger, burger, or whatever it is. There's meals provided along the Gulf Coast every day of the week. So the main goal during business hours is to get them hooked up with those agencies, and then after business hours is to take care of those emergency situations. But you'll see those signs going up, and as we see how the program's working and expand out, you'll see more and more signs. And the way it's worked in other cities is you see decreased panhandling and we'll say increased help, because they're actually going to the agencies that they need to be going to get that help. So we'll see how it works over the next couple months. Councilman also mentioned the ordinances that we're working on to help with events. There's multiple ordinances that the city attorneys and city council are working on to help hopefully give us more tools to kind of help control what's going on with these events. If you've been here any time, you've known since the late 90s till now, we've grown to the event capital of the world, it seems, certainly in Mississippi. So hopefully these new ordinances will help us better control it, safer for the officers, safer for the people coming. And then depending on where you live, you're not having to deal with increased traffic and everything else. But that's something that's in the works. Hurricane preparedness, we're in that season, want to mention it. Make sure you're checking around your houses, checking around, picking up things that could fly away, certainly with the hurricanes coming. We've all dealt with them. We know what we need to do. But make sure you're ready. Make sure you're stocked up on your necessary supplies and you have your plan for you and your family. As far as the department goes, we're still hiring for sworn officers. So if you know any family members, yourself, friends that are looking for a job, we have sworn officers, dispatchers, mechanics, a few admin positions that are still open. You can go to the city website under Human Resources and find each of those positions. We currently have about 8 officers in the academy right now. We have 3 in orientation, and we have 5 in the field training officer program, which is after the academy. And then we have about 8 that are supposed to be hired June 7th. But we still have multiple positions still open. Other than that, we're still working on better ways to keep you safe and cut down crime. Do I have any questions right now? Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to know the protocol. Last year in the summer, it was very hot. I had my doors open, and police came to my home, and they said a neighbor was concerned because I had my doors open. They never have seen my doors open. I said, oh yeah, it's hot. It was like 4 o'clock, so I'm shutting my window. I said it was like, well, let me lock my door, so I'm going, so they're taking me shoeless to my, you know, I know it's ridiculous. But, and then I see this cop about to go in my home, and I said, I didn't tell him he could go in my house. And so he goes in the bag, so they pull my, my identification, I guess my tag, they ran my tag, and they let me go. Have a good day. Of course, I didn't turn around. And I did not give them the bird either. But, I felt like that I did, you know, I'm not that kind of person. But, so I went back. So I would just like to know the protocol. Did I have to show them my ID? Could they have, gone to the neighbor that they supposedly spoken to that was concerned? Or could they have seen around my house that there was no forced entry? So
But
it
it depends.
happens again.
Yeah, each call is different, and we get all kind of welfare concern calls.
I understand that.
A lot of them come in from anonymous people, so it may have been a case where they didn't know who called. Your particular incident, not familiar with, I'd have to look it up, which after this, if you want to give me the date and time, I'll be happy to do that. As far as the details of it, once again, your particular incident, I'd have to look it up and read
Well,
over
is
it.
this common? I mean, can somebody just come knock on your door, well, this happened and we need to see your ID? Am I obligated to show them my ID is what I'm asking you? And
It dep-
there's no sign of forced entry.
It depends on the situation. If they have reasonable suspicion, they can ask for your ID, but if they don't, then no.
Okay.
So, but it depends on the situation, which I'd have to do more research
They
on.
could have easily ran my car was in my carport, it wasn't in a garage, so they could have easily done that. And asked me to step outside, I would have been more than obliged to step outside, so they could have done that without being handcuffed.
Right.
And I
Well-
wasn't belligerent, I wasn't.
Once again, without looking at the situation, it's hard to give you a direct answer because I don't know all the circumstances. Depends on,
Safe response.
right, well, it depends on why they were called, what the person said on the phone and everything else, so. Any other, yes, sir.
Have you solved the problem of the catalytic converters thefts, that rash of those that we had? You got that under control now?
Well, that comes and goes, and unfortunately, currently, I don't believe we've been having any more reports come in, but it does come and go, and it seems like as soon as we arrest somebody on it, 6 months later, there's somebody else doing it. So it's something that we have to just keep on. One of the things that helps us is a program called Leads Online, which all scrap metal people, all scrap metal collectors have to report to through the state. But unfortunately, sometimes they don't report it properly, but it's a tool that we have to use. Yes, sir.
I would appreciate it if you could step up, patrol spots on Old Bay Road. And I live, between Ridge Avenue and Fox Fair.
You talking about for speeding?
Correct.
Yeah.
And I know speed humps are off the table, from what I hear, I know they have one in Dillon Park, and that's what I've argued about. That should have set a precedent right there. Let's not talk about that. If you can increase patrol right there, I know it's hard to be on the radar. Councilman Tisdale wrote a letter, just to give you a little background, to Chief Miller. He almost had one of his constituents right there at Linwood all day. He had hit at his mailbox, and I almost got hit near at the time. I mean, probably all we could do is step up the patrol. I could get, you know, my street traverses 4 neighborhoods, Old Bay Road. It's a residential street. And that traffic light's part of the problem. I can't even get out my driveway. 5:15, I had enough problem getting out of the beat to come here. It's stacked up. But people all that, I won't say that.
Sure.
Make that light go north or straight to the east on Athens, and then something needs to be done.
Yeah, we'll definitely,
I'm welcome to speed humps, but, you know, I know it costs money, and, you know, there's liability issues, et cetera, but, you know, if you could step up, you know, patrol, and I'm talking between Rich and Old Bay, Councilman Tisdale will come, and like Chief Miller about, you know, the other segment toward Lakeville or, the corner down there, Walton Drive.
yeah, we'll definitely put it on the traffic list for increased patrol. Old Bay is Old Bay and that whole area is one of the things that we've discussed.
Yeah, I live near Old Bay and Fox Ferry.
Yeah, we've discussed it many times in the traffic committee meeting, and we're trying to come up with a resolution.
If you want to sit in my driveway there in the middle of the week, have at it. Let's do it.
Yes, sir.
It's my driveway too.
We can do that. Yes, sir.
Just by the fire station, that's next to Margaret Sherry Library. That traffic light there, the traffic heading south on Pops Ferry Road. I don't know how many times when I come out that light, I live in that neighborhood. People don't slow down. They just keep, I almost fatigue them a few times there. But I'm just wondering, could they look at maybe putting a light further down, say traffic light coming up because people heading south fly right through it.
We'll bring it up in the traffic committee meeting. There's some other things on Pops Ferry that are being built right now.
Okay.
And just recently in a traffic committee meeting, we've talked about different areas on Pops Ferry. So I'll make sure to bring that up and then put that on the traffic list as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Golf carts. Motion.
Yes, sir.
It's bad. I mean, kids is all over the place. And I'm scared to death because I live on Bruce Abel's by the country club, and that's where they all come through. And, man, they come flying through there. You don't see them. You got backup cameras, stuff like that. I'm afraid somebody will get hit. I just want to go on record, you know, that something's got to be done.
One thing will help us, because we put it out to all our patrol officers to watch that and enforce it. So you have to have a registered license. If you're not a licensed driver, you're not supposed to be driving it anyways. But anytime you see something like that, please give us a call, because we can't be everywhere. But if you call us, then we know where to go and hopefully catch them.
Believe me, if you just come after school or one Friday night or whatever, you'll see plenty of them, you know. But like I said, I'm concerned about them getting hit more than anything, you know, because they don't watch what they're doing. There's 6 or 7 of them hanging on there. And another thing is those little electric scooters.
Yes, sir.
Those things fly. They come flying by, you can't hear them. You know, like I said, I'm concerned about just backing out my driveway, hitting one, you know, and I don't want to do that. I mean, I definitely don't want a child to get hurt.
Yes, sir.
You know. But I know it's a parent's responsibility, you know, to make sure the kids, you know, operate the golf cart correctly or whatever. Something's got to be looked at, you know.
Well, I put out for extra patrol there, but again, if you could help us, and when you see it, call us. That gives us somebody to go look for that day, and then hopefully between what we're trying to do and you calling, that'll curtail some of it. Hopefully.
Well, I think too, if you just stop 1 or 2 of them,
Yeah.
okay, you don't have to give a ticket or anything. Just stop 1 or 2.
Sure.
Say where you live, your car, you have a driver's license. Put a little scare tactic, you know, in it and say, hey, look, next time, you know, it's not going to be good, you know. But, you know, these cars aren't supposed to be ridden like they are, you know.
You're right.
I know we got the city deal that you can ride them, and I only know, I play at some PS, I got one car, but I only know a couple of people that have their cars registered, you know, that ride them on the streets, you know.
Well, as of Monday, we had 97 registered in the city. So I can tell you there's only 97 registered. So, but that is something that we definitely needs improvement on.
So the main thing is go on record that we need to take a look at that.
Yes, sir.
Chief Tibet.
Yes, sir.
I brought up the same issue with this last board meeting, and I spoke to you about the same issue, almost verbatim what this gentleman just told you. And it's always inaction when we bring up complaints or get something done.
Well, I can tell you that we've issued several tickets to kids. There's
You said
even
the
been,
same thing last time.
well, we can't be everywhere. I can tell you that we've issued several tickets to kids and their parents, and even towed some golf carts. That what will help is each time you see it, call us. We can go directly to that incident and then take care of it at that time. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I live in the Biloxi, Pops Ferry, and that right-hand turn lane that would take you down Country Club Road,
Yes, ma'am.
that right-hand turn lane is used as a passing lane
Yes, sir.
The
Oh,
turn
yes,
lane
ma'am.
in front of Margaret Sherry Library, and it is unbelievable. I don't even walk to the side of the street and put my hand out and yell at people. And coming here, I saw a black car all the way back behind me on Fox Ferry, flying. I knew what they were doing. They were trying to pass all the cars and then swing in at the last minute so that they don't have to be in traffic. And it's bad. It's a miracle there is not an accident every day. You could probably sit at the soccer field across the line. You could probably permanently station a patrol car there, and the city would have so much money that you're gonna have to raise taxes again, because that area right there is where they do that cut.
Right.
In front of the line of traffic, so they don't have to be in traffic with everyone else.
I'll put that on the list as well for additional traffic control.
Let me add something to that. You know, that's been a problem for a long time. And before it was right there, it was up closer. That's why we put those cones there. We actually had vehicles ending up in the yard of that house where that road ends. And so we put that medical barrier up, then we put cones up. And no matter what we do, that behavior just ends up before whatever we do, right? And so I don't know how we can do that unless we break it up a different way. There's just, it's,
There's a couple of the cones that have been broken off. Obviously, somebody didn't make it.
Well, in the,
They hit them and broke it off, so it's, I mean, I can't tell you how fast I know they're going. Got to be 55, 60 miles an hour, it has to be.
in past traffic committee meetings, we actually talked about those cones there, and different things that we can do. It's still in the works of research, but for right now, the only thing I know to do is put a patrol car there and write tickets.
good.
Yeah, you could just station someone there, especially in the heavy time when people are getting off work or out of the high school.
Yes,
when it's
ma'am.
open. Boy, it's bad. It's so bad sometimes that I can't get out of the bluffs for a long time because they're just flying down that right-hand lane. You can't get into traffic.
And I've been picking up those cones in my yard, by the way.
I think we've talked before about that. So, yes, sir.
The lower soccer field where the Spanish guys play soccer,
Yes, sir.
there needs more controls over there because there's some stuff goes over that parking lot.
So about a week or two ago, we did get a complaint, and we issued more patrol during the weekend times when those games are going on. One is they're leaving their garbage, they're doing a lot of stuff. So we have stepped up, increased patrol on the weekends there during those game times. So hopefully you'll see a decrease in that.
And they're leaving a lot of stuff down on Cherry Lane, right around the corner. They'll be parking there, they'll be parking on the grass.
Okay.
And last week, they were actually parking pickups on the soccer field. There's a lot of young drinking going on over there. And when I drive through there, it's like, don't even look at it. You can't, it's very uncomfortable to even drive through there.
Well, I'm going to reiterate the increased patrol to our units. But like I said, hopefully you'll see a decrease in that here shortly. Yes, ma'am.
I want to add my street to the golf course and the city. I live on Gresham, and it's like a racetrack in the afternoon. And now the school is out during the summer. These golf carts, kids are like 11 and 12 years old with babies hanging off the back. You know, we watch them. Excuse me. We watch them constantly. I don't know where they're coming from or where they're going. But the racetrack,
I can tell you the youngest that we've taken home, taking the golf cart, was 9 years old. So I understand that it is a problem, and with increased traffic control and increased patrol up there, that whole area, whether it's the soccer fields, golf carts, or whatever, we'll add it to the list.
I've seen adult men, adult women with babies. I don't even know if they have seatbelts or nothing. The babies are just on there while they're driving.
Like I said earlier, if you see something like that, please call us right away, and then we can address that problem right then and there. But no, they should be in a seatbelt. That's why they're supposed to have seatbelt. They're required to have seatbelts and everything else. Yes, ma'am.
Would it not be helpful or just put some signs that this is prohibited and law and, would be enforced,
We can do that. And on the roads,
signs
so.
on some of those roads, maybe
Right.
somebody would take heed to that.
Right, and the speed limit is 25. If it's over 25 miles an hour, you can't be on that road. So that is a good suggestion.
Riding in the golf carts mainly is what I'm saying.
Right.
Children riding in golf carts under the age of 18 or something, whatever, is prohibited, fines will be issued or something.
That's a good suggestion.
Because if they don't see the signs, they won't know that they're gonna get in trouble. They'll think, oh, well, nobody's gonna see me, nobody's gonna call on me.
Yes, ma'am.
But if they saw signs everywhere, especially out there by the place in Sunkiss, and we see it all the time, kids riding up down North Country Club Road or South Country Club Road all the time. And those, she's right, there are little children just in the back of the carts or just sitting there and little bitty kids, I'm saying, like you said, 9 or 10 years old. They don't know what they're doing. They wouldn't know what to do if a car was heading to them. They're just joyriding.
Yes, ma'am.
But I think if some signs were put out and the parents would be alerted that
My 2 cents in on Foxbury. Every morning I take my grandkids to school on Foxbury. And it is bumper to bumper, as everybody knows. And there are 3 or 4 cars that use the turning lane as a passing lane every morning. Every morning. If we could ever get a car to be stationed there.
I've got it.
I guarantee you.
I've got it on the list just for
And
that.
I promise you, they're the same cars. There's a dark blue one, there's 2 black ones, and the windows are You don't know who they are. I can't tell you if it's a man or a woman driving the car, but I promise you, you'll get them.
I've got it on the list just for that. Yes, ma'am.
Maybe if you impound the golf cart and make the
We-
parents pay a hefty fine and come back and get it.
We do that. We do that quite often. We tow the golf cart, and they have to come, just like if we towed your car, you'd have to pay that fee and everything else.
Do the parents get cited for anything like contributing to the delinquency of a minor?
They get cited, and I can't tell you the exact fines right now, but, and don't quote me, I think it's like $1,000 for allowing an unlicensed driver, and then no insurance, which if you don't have insurance, if you're not registered, I think is another $1,000. So the fees are quite hefty. I don't have those numbers on me, and again, don't quote me, but I believe it is around $1,000 for that fee. Yes, sir.
Is there any kind of we see real dark tinted windows, and you can't see who's in there. Is there any kind of guideline that you can go by?
There is, when the companies actually tint them, they can only be so dark, and my 2 friends over here, correct me if I'm wrong, Highway Patrol is the only one that can issue a ticket for that. Am I right? Unless it changed. Yeah. Yeah, but there is a tint requirement that the companies are supposed to go by, and they can be cited for it. Yes, sir.
Well, you can't even see them from when you're marked up next to them. You can't see them.
It's not supposed to be on the front windows.
I know that everybody knows this. Has there been any citations on these type of things?
I don't have that data on me right now, but I can tell you cars have been pulled over for it, but I don't have the data as far as how many we pulled over and everything else.
One quick question, you talk about calling, if you see something, you don't call 911, do you? I'm just saying.
No. If it's a non-emergency, please use a non-emergency number, which is, right, which is 392-0641. But certainly call a non-emergency number, please. That way we can get, like I said, we get an officer out there. You see something, even if it's a speeder, you see something, let us know. And then hopefully we can find the people who address it right then and there. But between our patrols, increased patrols we're going to do up there, as well as you calling in, hopefully we'll get to a majority of the people that are violating golf carts, speeding, whatever it is.
What's that phone number again?
392-0641. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you add to your list, Big Lake, and Pass Road, the red light there. People don't know what red means. They don't know.
Right.
Red light, and it's pretty scary. If you're turning left, you've got to really be cautious pulling out on the Pass Road. Talk about making money, the city making money. Why don't you put a camera up there and fine people for running the red light?
It's against the state law right now. Yes, sir.
I live 2526 South Shore Drive, which is approximately 100 yards north of Grand South Line. My issue and concern deals with the hunting around Thanksgiving time. Beginning the weekend of Thanksgiving, you'll have 100 or more gunshots beginning at 5:45 in the morning. It'll go on for several hours, and then it'll be a lull, and then often around dusk, you'll have the same issue again. A couple of years ago, I'm not sure what they did, I think they put signs at boat launches, because that's how they're getting out there.
Yeah.
And for a while there, they shut it down, but last year, it was terrible. It was every day beginning, whenever hunting season begins until the very end, every morning starting before 6 in the morning. And terribly annoying.
So I can tell you, every duck hunting season, we go to the boat launches, we get with the county, so, ask them to go to theirs as well. And then talk to hunters early, or I say hunters, to try to curtail that. But it is a huge problem, it's something we have to deal with every year during duck season.
Yeah, 2 years ago, I'm not sure what y'all did different, but it really worked well. Because last year,
That was the boats. Yeah, I think we had the county out with us. But that's something that we deal with every year, and it is a nuisance, not only for you, but for us as well. And we're just going to keep saturating the area, keep going out there, and then putting out public information on it, that it is against the law in the city limits. Have any other questions? Well, I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Just a couple of takeaways from that. The sign idea, I think it's phenomenal. There was actually a study done in St. Louis a few years ago. I say a few, time flies when you're having fun, right? It was probably more like 10 or 12 years ago. And it was about littering. And they did a study. They counted how many pieces of trash were on these strips of the highway. And they put signs up that said, if you see someone littering, call this number. And so the ticketing incidences went down to about 20% of the previous 3 years on average, because people were afraid to litter if they thought someone was actually watching. So I think it's a great idea. And I think if we added call and then non-emergency number on it, it really makes you think these people will call if they see me doing this. Great idea. Thank you for suggesting it. Some of these concerns, and a lot of the concerns that we have, stem from a lack of numbers, right? We've seen a small exodus in the officers from the police department. It's because we fell behind as far as being competitive as a city we have stepped up what we do for our officers, increased pay for city employees, and we're seeing numbers come back in. We just saw 8 more on the last B News announced that they were being sworn in. So that will help us a lot, getting more people out there. And that little strip from Old Bay to Big Lake, I was a kid and I was irresponsible, and I used that pass-through area to beat those lights. I know exactly what you're talking about, because well, I lived back there, so I experienced, but I was also part of the problem. But this was a long time ago. I'm old. But you're right. It needs to be solved. Well, I fit in there somewhere, right? And so I agree. We need to get some detail out there and slow some stuff down. And I know when I was out there, something that really affected me and my driving habits were those lights, those boards that clock you, and you're worried because you think there's a motorcycle cop down there getting ready to pull you over. Those things worked amazingly for me, and I'll make sure that we work on stepping up our enforcement in that area.
Put a vehicle sign to the bobtail.
And hey, also another thing that you need to worry about, the credit union's gonna be expanded.
Yeah.
How many people you gonna
Yeah, it's
Bay Lake and Old Bay Road?
a lot more traffic.
The guy told me they're gonna stagger the times. I was really concerned about it.
Yeah, I think they are really working hard to work with us on figuring out how to manage the added traffic. Another concern is going to be
It's only gonna be one, same ingress and egress.
well, the other concern is the continuation all the way down to Highway 90. When Pops Ferry is expanded all the way to Highway 90, the number of traffic there is going to increase, which will slow down or increase traffic time at those lights, which will give people more incentive to cut through. And there's a lot of things in the works to address that. Once we connect to Highway 90, correct me if I'm wrong, Jerry, it becomes a state road, and we can get more funding to help address problems and traffic concerns on Pops Ferry Road. Another thing you may have seen in the news was the soup kitchen in East Biloxi, and the council shot it down. Now, we didn't shoot it down because we're heartless. We shot it down because we thought the location was bad. One, we looked at the numbers of crime that happened on Water Street, and we wanted to compare those to what we think would occur in that area, being surrounded by a bunch of residential homes or apartment complexes, places where people live. And so at the end of that, Jerry discussed with Paul Tisdale and the council the regions that would be appropriate for a soup kitchen like that. And I think they're going to look for something more amenable to both the city's ordinances and the community's needs. And with that, I'll segue into Jerry Creel, and he'll give us an update on some of the development and things going on in the city as well as the ward. Mr. Creel?
Thank you. Thank y'all for having us tonight to speak about things that are going on in Biloxi. I represent the Community Development Department. We do a number of things there. I'll run through it just real quick in case you have questions about any one of these. We handle economic development, planning and zoning, building permits and inspections, code enforcement, floodplain management, business licenses, historic preservation, museums and cultural affairs, and stormwater management. Most of the times when we get into these meetings, the things that people want to know about the most is economic development and what's coming, and then there'll usually be questions about code enforcement, maybe some questions about floodplain management. But I'm happy to report that we've got a number of things going on in the way of economic development. We've got right at $80 million right now worth of development going on throughout the city. And you can, if you point in any direction, I can name at least a half a dozen major projects that are going on in those directions. I can tell you an overview. Right now, we've got either under construction or in review, we've got 8 hotels, 10 restaurants, 3 convenience stores, 3 car washes, 6 boat and RV storage, 5 retail centers, 3 climate control mixed storage, and several amusement facilities. And residential every direction. We've got not just single family houses and subdivisions being built, but we've got apartments and townhomes that are either on the table or under construction. We mentioned some of the other projects that have been mentioned here. You know, the Keesler Federal Credit Union moving their main headquarters here to Pass Road, that's a big deal. The BART building downtown and a number of other projects. Now, specifically about Ward 4, I can give you a few projects that are either just completed or under construction. We've just completed the last phase of the Arbor Landing Apartments up off of Elsie Drive. That added another 284 apartment units to the city. Under construction, we've got a subdivision on Brazier called Anchor Landing that's got 66 lots there. Under review, we've got a subdivision called the Reserve at Marsh Island, which is off of Causeway Boulevard. The Bertucci Park project at Pops and Atkinson is still on the table. And then the one that everybody seems to be really excited about, the new Rouse's that's going into the old Winn-Dixie location. And just an update on that, what's going on right now, they haven't actually started construction. We're still waiting on the plans to come in, but the engineers are down there, been down there this week, and what they're trying to do is to isolate the electrical there on that entire building. Over the years, a lot of that electrical got commingled, and so what they're trying to do is to isolate those other tenants that are in there so that they can then build the new services for the Rouse's. So we expect to get those plans in the next month, maybe month and a half, and what they'll do is go inside, they'll cut out the existing floor because they like to replace all of those Freon lines and all of those kind of lines underneath. If you've ever been in one of these stores where they cut a trench and they never could get the floor back level again, Rouse's doesn't like to do that. They like to have a nice shopping experience when you come in. Couple of other things that are going on. Gaming revenues are really going very well. In addition to that, sales tax revenues, after Hurricane Katrina, we had a hard time getting sales tax revenues back up to near $1 million because we lost a lot of our revenue producers in town. But what we tried to do was to shoot for, first of all, let's see if we can get $1 million a month in sales tax revenues consistently. And then once we get to that consistent $1 million, then we'll shoot for some higher totals. And I'm proud to announce that over the past 25 months, we've had over $1 million, 25 months in a row. That's never happened in the history of Biloxi, and we're averaging $1.25 million each month right now. So great economic news. Those are the kind of economic indicators that we look at to make sure that we're going in the right direction. The mayor told somebody the other day, they were talking about, the mention of recession everywhere. He said, tell them if they're dealing with recession, just come to Biloxi because we don't have a recession going on here. One of the things that I wanted to piggyback off of one of the things that we were talking about with the addition of signs and those kind of things is that we've reestablished the traffic committee for the city. And we have representatives on there from the police department, from the engineering department. I'm on there. And what we do is we field requests that come in every month, and we review those requests where someone's requesting a speed limit sign or signs that prohibit golf carts and those kind of things. So if you get those requests to Craig Ross at the Public Works Department, he will log all of those requests in, and then he brings those forward to the Traffic Committee when we meet. It's usually the third Thursday of each month, and we go over those. One of the things that Councilman Deming wanted me to address that he's getting a lot of questions about is the difference between right-of-ways and easements and what is the city's responsibility on these easements. Well, if it's ever a right-of-way, that means that the city actually owns the property, and it's certainly our responsibility to maintain the right-of-ways. If it's an easement, that means that it's still private property. In other words, if you have an easement that goes through your yard or across your business property, you still own the property. But the easement just gives us the right to go in there, depending on what kind of an easement it is, and address whatever the problem is. Let's say that it's a drainage easement, for example, that goes across your property. And now the city doesn't go out there and keep it cut like you would your yard. But if trees start to grow in that easement that's impeding the flow of water and affecting the drainage that's in that easement, then the city has a responsibility to go out there and remove whatever it is that's causing that bottleneck. And there are other types of easements like utility easements and access easements. A lot of the subdivisions that we have throughout the city over the past few years where the plats have been recorded, if you go look at the plat, you'll see that there's an easement that runs down the property line between your house and your neighbor's house. What that is actually is an access easement and it's usually 7.5 feet on either side of the property line. And the purpose of that is there's probably something behind your house, like a drainage easement or something like that, that we have to get to. That 15-foot gives us the ability to get a backhoe or a track hoe or whatever it is through that property to get back to the back and correct that problem, whatever it happens to be. So easements, you know, I can just tell you, we don't have the manpower to go out there and mow all these easements and everything else. But if you see that there's a problem in an easement, if you'll call, we can let you know what can be done. And you'd call the same person. You'd call Craig Ross at the Public Works Department, and there's a number there. It's 228-435-6279, and they take the request. 228-435-6279, Craig Ross, and he will log in whatever the question is, regardless of what department it's for, and then he transfers that request over to police or community development or whoever it is, and then somebody from that department will get back with you. So that's kind of what's going on. As far as code enforcement goes, let me tell you, we've run into a little bump in the road with community court. One of the things, there's been a change in the law that kind of limits us on what we can do as far as code enforcement goes in community court. We're trying to get over that stumbling block right now so that we can get the right to go back to having community court the way that we are. In the meantime, while we're trying to work that out with the attorneys, it's requiring us to take more cases to the city council for a resolution. If you've seen the agendas in the past couple of months, you'll see that the list of code enforcement properties on that list has grown. And that's the reason. If we can't handle it through community court, then we have to take it to the city council to get a resolution to go onto that property, to hire a contractor to go in and clean up that property. But we are still working to get those stumbling blocks out of the way so that we can go back to taking care of these private properties again where people are not maintaining those. So with that, I'll answer any questions. Yes, sir?
Yeah, I've got one. Now, I've always got all my permits. I've done them. I got my permits. And my neighbor does it. I went down. I've probably gotten 3 permits in 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And this neighbor of mine had a surface, like, you know, above ground swimming pool. He takes out this pool and he puts a in-ground swimming pool. Never got a permit. Never got a permit for the pool, for the plumbing, or for the electricity.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a runoff that is about 41 degrees that comes into my yard.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned him in, and you know what they told me? Well, I thought they would use that as leverage. So he got his permit, and I'm sorry, you know what they told me? They said, take him to court. Now, do you think that's a responsible way to talk to people?
Yes. No, sir, I don't think that, no, sir, I don't think that's a responsible way to talk to people. Sometimes the answer that we have to give is not a pleasant answer, and a lot of times it gets interpreted the wrong way, and some people don't have the social skills that other people have. The problem with that, and I vaguely remember a case like that. I don't know if it was your case or not. Yeah. What we do, yes, sir, what we do is we try to get one of the engineers out there to determine whether or not the pool is actually what's causing the area to flood. And sometimes it can be determined and sometimes it can't. Sometimes we suggest that the person hire their own engineer to see where the water is coming from. Now, with regard to the swimming pool going in without a permit, that's one of the things that we're struggling with through code enforcement right now, is because this law limits us on how far onto that property we can go to observe whatever the violation is.
Well, when the inspector come out and look, we put the ladder against my fence.
Yes, sir.
And I thought they were going to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, I mean, even a half-blind person can see the water coming through the dog-eared fence.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we know where it's coming from, and if you've got an incline that's coming like this, don't you, that's probably where the water's coming from, don't you think?
What?
Well, not only
Yes, sir.
I know you're not supposed to kill anybody,
Yeah.
and you want me to keep getting my permits.
Uh-huh.
So what do I do? You tell me as a good lawyer.
Well, one of the things, and let me just tell you, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to backtrack here, but we depend on the public a lot to call us when something like that happens. You know, we can't see what's going on everywhere, and residents are the best code enforcement officers we can have. If you report these things, we will go out and investigate them. Sometimes we can do something about it, sometimes we can't. But I can tell you, if there is something that we can do about it, we do. Yes, sir.
They
Yeah.
said nothing. They said,
Okay.
I'll tell you what you can do. Give me a good lawyer's name and I'll get him.
We got a good lawyer sitting right over here on this side of the room. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's him. Yeah. You need to talk with him before you leave tonight. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I know y'all excited about the anchor landing, but I'm not, because I'm directly across the street from it, and we already got a racetrack, and I think we're gonna have a two-way racetrack when all the houses get to be built. But my concern is, the, right across the street from me, I think is the part where there's gonna be the wetlands. I think you said that there's gonna be a portion of that property that is going to be considered wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
My concern is twofold. Flooding, when it rains on that side, and the post office won't let me move my mailbox in my yard. I have to walk way through the water when it rains because there's no runoff. The second thing is the overgrowth from the wetlands, the trees and the limbs and all of that. I don't know why I should be responsible for cutting them, but I have been because I can't get to my mailbox unless I wade through the tree. I can wade through the water when it rains, and now since it's been raining constantly, the trees are overgrown, and so we got out and cut it ourselves, but that shouldn't be my responsibility. So I don't own the wetlands.
Okay.
And the other thing is, the grass on that side of the land on that side of the road, I know it's not mine, but we maintain the property, the land, I'm sorry, the grass across the street around my mailbox. But my neighbor doesn't do it, so it's a forest. So whose responsibility is A, the wetlands, and B, the flooding that is caused because there's nowhere for the run the water run off. And when it rained like it did a couple of weeks, was the last week we had that hard rain, it was like, it wasn't even a whole day of rain. And the street was flooded, the water was so flooded that it went out in the street.
One of the best things that can happen to an undeveloped piece of property is for that piece of property to be developed. Because what happens before it's developed is that there's no discipline to that water that runs off that property. It can run in whatever direction is natural for it to run. But when that property gets developed, that means an engineer is brought in to study the drainage to see how to control it. And what the law says is that a development, you can't release any more water after the development than you did before the development was there. So it's their responsibility, the property owner's responsibility, to harness that water and for it to be released at the same rate that it was before it occurred. Now, as far as in other words, your post-development runoff cannot exceed your pre-development runoff. That's what the law says. As far as the trees that are there, whatever the problem is there, it's the property owner's responsibility. And if there's something there, right now the developer would own the property.
Even though it's gonna be a wetland, as you say?
Yes, ma'am. It's still their responsibility. And we write up people on wetlands all the time because, again, like we were talking about the drainage easements, if you've got a detention pond, that detention pond was designed to hold a certain volume of water based on the runoff coming off of that property. And if you allow trees to grow in there, then the size of that tree is replacing the volume of water that should have been held in there. So it's affecting the ability to hold that amount of water that it was calculated to cover. So what we have to do is go out there. I have one person that's my stormwater management inspector, and he goes from detention pond to detention pond after they're established to make sure that they're not allowing growth to come in there that's going to adversely affect the neighbors, and to make sure that they maintain it the right way.
Well, the retention pond, as you call it, is way down on Camp Wills in Bradenton. It's not,
No, they'll have to have a detention pond on their own property.
There in front of my house.
Uh-huh.
And you saying that that water who comes out into the street this way is gonna all of a sudden go that way?
I'm not going to say that all of it is. I'm saying that what happens is that they have to discipline that water to go to the detention pond that they will have to establish on their piece of property. They have to put one in. Every development that comes to town now has a requirement to hold that water. Now, if it can be designed so that the after-development runoff doesn't exceed the pre-development runoff, in some cases, they may not have to have a detention pond, but I know in that particular case, there is a detention pond designed for that piece of property, and the drainage will have to run to that.
It has to, but it's not, is my point.
Well, it's not finished yet. The development's not finished yet, but we have to go back out there after a development is done. I have to go out there, the engineering department has to go out there to make sure that everything that was proposed to be done and approved before that subdivision plat was approved is done before we sign off on it. If we don't sign off on it, then they can't sell lots to build houses out there. So there are some checks and balances inside this system.
But is it gonna happen anytime soon because the houses are not being built, it's over there staying the dirt?
That's because the final plat hadn't been approved yet. It's still a development project right now.
But if it's gonna flood, and I'm just gonna walk
Okay.
the water anyway.
Any other, yes, ma'am?
Just turn me off.
I'm just curious, if the council didn't approve where the soup kitchen would be because of, the residential area and because of potential crime, where might the soup kitchen be more suitable? Would it be among commercial businesses, apartments, hotels, another residential area?
Well, one of the suggestions that was made, Councilman Tisdale had called me or texted me before the council meeting Tuesday. And he said, I understand that all soup kitchens have to go through conditional use. And I said, no, that's not true. The reason that location had to go through the planning commission and the city council is because it's in a zone called neighborhood business zoning. Neighborhood business is typically right next to residential neighborhoods. So the planning commission and the city council, a case like that would go before them to look at all the conditions around there to see if that's an appropriate location. But we do have some areas where soup kitchens or social service agencies are allowed as a use by right. And I told Councilman Tisdale that, he brought it up at the meeting. He said, what I would suggest to Loaves and Fishes is that they look for a place that's zoned RB. And if they can find a place zoned RB, they wouldn't even have to go to the planning commission or the city council unless there were some variances involved, so. Okay, yes, sir?
Has there been any interest in somebody taking over the hobby,
Okay, we have two tenants that they're not ready to announce yet, two tenants that'll be moving into the Hobby Lobby building, and also a tenant that'll be moving into the vacant tenant space that's right up on Pass Road. The developers, as a part of recruiting those people, had to agree to make several improvements to that shopping center, and I think you're going to be surprised. They're going to give it a facelift and redo the parking lot and put up a new billboard sign or multi-tenant advertising sign on the front, but yes, they are. And we have to deal with these developers, and let me tell you, they're overly cautious sometimes. We told at the last ward meeting that on Rouse's, the Rouse's people told us that if word gets out about this, we'll pull the deal. And so we had to keep all of that under wraps. And in a city like Biloxi, that's a hard thing to do, you know. But we had to keep the developer was ready to make the announcement. When they called us and told us that we could make the announcement, then we did.
And last question, with the continuation of Prospect Road to Nobby Bank, whenever it starts, has there been any economic interest in that property?
Yes, sir, there has. Matter of fact, there's some undeveloped properties there. If you're coming off of Pass Road onto Pops Ferry, there's a wooded area over there, and it's zoned multifamily, and some of those developers are very interested in seeing this project start so that they can get started. And there'll be some other interest in it once they see it going in. We've been hearing about the Pops Ferry extension for years, And so these people are waiting to get excited until they actually see some construction start out there. Have you heard? I'm not sure, but I know it's in the very near city. I know that we've acquired all the property that we need in order to do that. Maybe Christy could address that when she gets up here with engineering. I saw a hand right here, sir, next.
Yes, sir. Let me ask you. Those people who cut the yard for them, coming to the neighborhood, do they have to have a license?
If they're in business and they operate in Biloxi, they're supposed to have a Biloxi license to do that, yes. Now, some of these people may not be licensed in Biloxi. They might be licensed in Gulfport or another city. But they are supposed to be licensed. They are supposed to be insured, yes, sir.
And in our neighborhood, we are called several times. But what they do is they blow the debris onto the street.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have the audacity to blow the debris into the drain. We have called several times.
Mm-hmm.
I've lived on that street for more than 20 years. For the first 16 to 17 years, it never flooded.
Mm-hmm.
But since so many people coming and cutting on, just the other day, it flooded.
When you see that happening, if you see that happening where somebody's blowing it down the drain, if you'll call us, we'll send a code officer out there and write up the person that's doing that.
Sir, I can call
Yeah. Have you called our department?
I haven't seen that white thing even come out.
Okay. We have 3 code enforcement officers that are each assigned to a specific part of the city. And anytime we get any type of a code enforcement complaint, that officer goes out there and investigates it. So if you'll call again the next time you see it, we'll address it.
Well, I would like to have a call. And there was times that I would say something to individuals, and some of them would be able to do that. But in this day and time, it's best to keep your mouth closed.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, call us. That's our job. We'll address it. Yes, sir. Okay. Good. Okay. Yes, sir.
You mentioned Bertucci Park earlier. Any idea when Dr. Bertucci going to get started with that?
I've been talking to Dr. Bertucci. I've been here 20 years now. I've been talking to Dr. Bertucci for at least 15 years on that property. And he'll call me to meet with him. I'll go out there and meet with him. He'll show me his idea, and it'll sound like it's about ready to happen. And then a year or two will go by, and he'll say, I've rethought that. I think I'd rather do this. Phase 1, which was going to be the several houses over there next to Taylor Oaks on Atkinson. Originally he had a number of houses over there, but he decided after the neighbors came out and said that they really didn't want to see that many houses, he backed off and actually turned that into 9 single-family lots there. He wanted to do it like Audubon Place down in New Orleans, where it would be kind of like a gated community. And we were in agreement with that, but he hasn't come back in recently, but it is still in the works. So. Anything else? Yes, ma'am?
Any updates on the Keesler expansion? I know that they bought property from Mr. Ford.
That's right.
They submitted any plans at all?
The sale of the property was contingent on the zoning being changed. The zoning was changed to the zone that was needed for that building to go in. My guess is that once the sale was completed, they released their architects to start putting it together. The architect that was initially involved in that was David Hardy, who is very environmentally friendly. And every project David's ever worked on, he was very sensitive to things like the trees and the green areas and the wildlife that's out there and everything else. So I would expect that we'll probably get those plans very soon.
Traffic studies have begun, nothing that you're aware of?
Well, see, they haven't brought anything to DRC yet, the Development Review Committee. Once they bring it to us, that's when we would trigger traffic studies and those kind of things. But my guess is they'll probably go ahead and get that done before they come to the DRC committee. Yes, ma'am.
Can I call the traffic committee directly to ask them if I have an issue and ask them if my issue is presented to them?
The traffic committee the members are in each department. So regardless of what the request was, we'd still have to take it back to the full committee to discuss.
A year ago, I requested some assistance with some traffic issues in our neighborhood, and I was told it would be presented to the traffic
if you'll call Craig Ross at that number, he keeps up with the decisions that are made.
What's the number?
It's 228-435-6279. Anything else?
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you so much for having us tonight. We're happy to come out and, okay.
We have a comprehensive plan to improve Foxbury and Pass Road intersection when Rouse's opens, because those are outdated lights.
Yeah. Christy Levitard with engineering will address that when she gets up here.
Get in that turning lane right now, going eastbound, and try to turn on Foxbury, and one car will turn and try to go to Starbucks, and the traffic backs up all the way to Ridge Avenue. So we're going to increase traffic, and we've done a comprehensive plan to improve that. It's also an evacuation route, and we've done a plan to improve traffic in that intersection.
Yes, that's part of the Foxbury Extension project, that intersection will be improved.
Thank you.
And we'll talk more about that and other intersections and things with Ms. Lavazza is up here to speak. One thing that crossed my mind regarding the lawn cutting, I complain about it in my neighborhood all the time. And as you mentioned it, and Mr. Creel talked about it, it reminded me of what's called an agent-master relationship, right? So if you hire someone to do something for you and they mess it up, you're ultimately responsible for what they do. And so, Mr. Creel, is there any provision that residents could report that to you, and instead of catching and citing the lawn company, you cite the owner of the property?
We could do that, yes, because the violation occurred on their property. What kind of weight it would carry when we get them to community court, I just don't know, but we could do that, yes.
Well, I think at least it would start the conversation with the lawn care companies.
That's correct.
And the residents to say, hey, look, don't blow this junk in the street, put it in bags. Jason, I know you've been over here twitching your thumbs, so why don't you give the report for the fire department?
Oh, Christie was going next.
No, they've got to build up a lot of questions for Christie. She's the finale.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Assistant Chief Davis with the Biloxi Fire Department. Chief Geyser is the fire chief of the fire department. Back in 2021, he and I became the face of the Biloxi Fire Department. It's a lot that's been happening within the fire department and also within the city of Biloxi. I'm not going to have as much as Chief DeBeck had and Jerry Creel had, Director Creel, but you need to know that since we've been in, we hit the ground running. We had to immediately spec out new fire trucks. Fire truck lifespan is about 20 years. Now, after 20 years, you sort of lose your rating if you don't get a new engine or truck. You can have a home built sooner than it takes to have a fire truck made and manufactured. We just received 3 new trucks. You should have saw it in your B News if you received the new B News from the city of Biloxi. But they are in the northern stations. I would say Station 7, which is right there at Pops Ferry and Cedar Lake, and then Station 10, which is on Old 67, and Station 8, which is on Wool Market Road. Just because those new fire trucks are housed in those stations does not mean that you won't see them in your neighborhood. Because what happens is when there's an emergency in your neighborhood or adjacent neighborhood, those trucks can possibly come because if your immediate fire truck that's out there at the Margaret Sherry Library is tied up, then they come and backfill. One of the good things about backfilling is we try now, since we're running more medical calls than fire calls, we try to make sure that we have a paramedic which can respond to advanced life support, meaning they're carrying all the drugs that paramedics carry that can help you when you have cardiac arrest episode or other life-threatening injuries. Usually the firefighter was always made to be BLS, which is basic life support, where we are doing CPR and carrying stuff like that. But now, since about maybe 6 to 8 years ago, every firefighter have to be a EMT, simply meaning that you have to be medically trained since we have sort of gravitated to that kind of response. So the good news for you all is that all your firefighters are medically trained, so when we get there, because sometimes it takes that AMR, a long time, the ambulance, a long time to get there. So we got to make sure that we are giving you the best care. So you should feel comfortable in Biloxi knowing that we got your best interests at heart. At Station 7, that fire truck, I would say a little bit about it. We sort of cater or put a decal on that truck that represents the Biloxi Public Schools, because that helps us with our recruiting of new firefighters. Engine 7 and Engine 6, which is the Margaret Sherry Library, and the fire station there by Cedar Lake, respond to the high school when there's an emergency. So therefore, when you pull up at the high school with that new fire truck, you'll see the Biloxi Schools logo on the side of it. So when you see that, you'll know that, oh, that's the fire truck that he was talking about, which is very important with recruiting. Speaking of recruiting, the fire department, we just graduated 8 new recruits out of the fire academy. That class was hosted here locally because we do send firefighters to Jackson, to the fire academy. Now, sometimes we have classes here. So we just graduated 8. The fire department is we hiring right now. We are short. We have so many people that are retiring. We had a hiring freeze a while back after the BP oil spill and Hurricane Katrina. We sort of went into pretty much a stop sign came up with the mayor and the city and said no hiring. So with that happening, we got so many firefighters that we hired at one time, and now those firefighters are retiring, but we have a gap there. So we're trying to fill that gap. So retention is tough right now, but the administration, the council, really been working with us to make sure that we can sort of have the best benefit package for the firefighters, and that's really been happening. So now we're accepting laterals at a fast rate, and also new firefighters. We sort of changed our hiring process. We do the hiring assessment every other month now, so that we can sort of keep the firefighters coming in faster than they did before. 25 years ago, it took me about 2.5 years to get hired with the Biloxi Fire Department. But now we just hired our last group in 4 months. So we feel like we're making good progress, and we're very excited about it. I want to talk a little bit about the event planning. I'm almost done. The event planning is something that I really want to share with you all. I know that I think Chief said it best, we happen to be the place to come for special events in the state of Mississippi, or Gulf Coast. And it sort of happened throughout our careers, and we see that everybody want to come to Biloxi. Well, one thing that I want to reassure you about and let you know is that when you come to Biloxi, even though you see all the vehicles and you live here in Biloxi, the fire department goal is to make sure that you still can receive the same response that you get in normal circumstances. So when you have a traffic backed up all the way down Highway 90, all the way down Pass Road, we make sure that we plan ahead so that we can respond to you if you're having chest pain, so we can respond to you if a baby needs to be delivered. We make sure that we have things in place where that you still get that same response. So I want to reassure you and let you know, even though a lot of people are here on the coast, you're not being forgotten. We still coming to you. We place fire trucks in places to make sure that you're covered. So you need to rest assured and know that you're in good hands when it comes to that. And the last thing I would talk about is 2 things, sort of go together. He tried to steal my shine because he started talking about a hurricane preparedness. And I didn't know the police. No, we work really good together. So in hurricanes, we just talked about this last council meeting. I think we was talking about how they're the most, I guess, exciting face to see when you're out there walking the streets trying to make sure the citizens and businesses of Biloxi are safe. So let's make sure that we do the things that we need to do to prepare that he had talked about. Make sure you know what area you live in, whether that area flood. Make sure you do everything that you can do so that in event something do happen, you've done your due diligence and make sure that you're safe. And we're coming to a certain point. When the wind starts blowing to a certain mile per hour, the fire department shuts down and we don't respond anymore. So it's very important to make sure that you're doing your part. Smoke detectors still are very important. Smoke detectors still save lives. And in the city of Biloxi, the fire department will come to your home and will install smoke detectors. So make sure that your smoke detectors are working. If your smoke detectors are not working, please give us a call and let us know so that we can come out and make sure you have working smoke detectors. And remember to change your battery every time change. Or when you hear it start beeping. Don't knock it down with a broom. Make sure that we put a new battery in there. That's all I have, Councilman. Yeah, oh, any questions? I like it.
I'll tell you, I knew the fire department did a lot of things, but I did not know they delivered babies. That is impressive.
We do.
So I want to get on to the Department of Parks and Recs. Jamie Lee is here in stead of the Director Sherry Bell. We've done a lot of work in the ward, especially near Margaret Sherry Library. We see the parks closed down right now because of the lighting conditions. And I know if you're on Facebook with one of my councilmen, Kenny Glavin, he posts incessantly about A.J. Holloway's park flooding and closing down and how we're not competitive with Pop Warner baseball, or not Pop Warner, Little League baseball. We are, I think, I don't know where the bond measure is, but we do have a bond measure out there to generate some funds to address this. Funds will be spent to address A.J. Holloway's Park as well as the Pops Ferry Recreational Park. We have a proposal, I think, with Mississippi Power to do a lease program versus bidding it out and paying for it. We're working through that to find the right financial fit for the city of Biloxi, but the park's been closed for a couple months now, and we are working diligently to get it back up and running. Mr. Lee, if you want to take over for me.
Thank you, Councilman. I appreciate that. As he said before, my name is Jamie Lee. I'm the Assistant Director of the Parks and Recreation Department. Now, I know it's going to be really hard to follow Chief Davis with what he just went through, but I'll give it my best shot. Councilman Deming mentioned, one of our main projects that we are looking at is the A.J. Holloway renovation, looking at turfing those fields. That's still out on the bid process right now, and we're hoping to receive some bids toward the end of the month. But Pops Ferry is an important part of it as well. You know, the lighting is so old out there that we are looking at different options of removing those poles and or, possibly replacing the lights. We're going through figures, see what we can do with that. The causeway, we're looking also, toward the end of the causeway, those solar lights that have been burnt out, we are looking at options of replacing those. They are no longer available to replace, so we're looking at different options on what we can do so we can get all of that lit back up again and, hopefully provide extra safety down there. Pickleball is one of the fastest things growing. I don't know if you've been here and seen it going on here. You see these brown lines that are on the floor. Those are the dimensions for a pickleball court that they set up in here during times. So, but as far as the Pops Ferry pickleball complex goes, Christy just let me know that the bid was awarded for the restroom facility out there. So it will be, construction should start on that relatively soon. But, as Parks and Rec, we're just, of course, as throughout your own homes, your yards, the grass is growing really well now. And so we're trying to keep up and cut all those. We have a lot of logistics going on with different events through the city. Some of the rodeos, setting tents, tables, chairs up. And of course, our Civic Center continues to be utilized. I was speaking to the event coordinator that's over the Civic Center, and I don't think there's a free weekend in there until June of 24. So, but that's a good thing. The facility's being utilized for what it was built for. So, other than that, I don't believe I have anything else. Does anybody have any questions for me? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
We have a little park right there behind the fire station number 10 on Pops Ferry.
Where the splash pad and everything is? Yes, ma'am.
And there's a walking track there.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't think there are any lights there. If you wanted to walk at night or something, I don't think there's any lights to where it's safer.
Right.
And that little walking track right there, I didn't know that could be.
Right, and,
Put up.
sure, I mean, that's definitely something we can look into. I know, for those of you that may live by Pennzoil, I believe, in the last few years, we had some installed at Pennzoil on their walking track. So that's definitely something that we will look into and explore options.
Later in the time, if you wanted to walk a little bit later at night or something, and it's just not lit up enough.
Yes, ma'am.
to be safe.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Splash pad.
Yes, sir.
Now, I haven't been over there in the last couple of weeks, so I don't know. Did y'all put a new coating on the splash pad this year?
I believe it was done,
It's so slick over there.
I want to say it was redone, I think it was last year, because I remember going out there.
It was a bad coating, because that thing
Okay.
was so slick over there. Those kids were just busting their feet.
I will go by there and look at it. Yes, sir. I sure,
Sue the city.
I sure will. Yes, sir. I will do that tomorrow morning. Yes, ma'am.
To add on to that, I used to work with the Boys and Girls Club with those kids out there, and when the water starts splashing around on the ground, it was like mud. And you know what I'm talking, when you're coming out of the splash pad, there's a little sidewalk, but it's just so muddy.
Right.
And all of the water, there was nothing to.
To catch the water as it comes off. And
It was just real muddy, and it would get so dirty.
And it is an ongoing battle with things like that, with it not being, you can't really put chemicals in the water. So you got standing water, you get algae that grows, different things like that, it is a constant battle. But
You just put, add seat, the seat sidewalk that's coming out of the splash pad just a little wider, that will cover up the parts where the water settles and makes.
there are some options that we could look at, whether, it could possibly be putting some sand and limestone down even, just something, something to help deter that. But I was not aware of that, but just like, I will go by there and look at those two concerns for you.
And is the city responsible for the, parking lot in front of the library, Mark Sherry? Because it's like they got more potholes than I got on my street, and that's a lot.
I can't answer that. I do know that, we're responsible, our department is responsible for the grounds there, cutting the grass, weed eating, and all of that. But as far as the actual parking lot goes, that would be something probably Councilman Deming could help you, look into as that goes.
Jerry may also know, the Harrison County Library System actually owns and operates the libraries. We just fund them, and we call them Biloxi Libraries, but they're really Harrison County library system. I'll have to double check. I'm guessing when I say yes, but I'll look into that. If you want to talk to me at the end, I'll get your name and number, and I'll give you a call back with what I find out.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and I walked the track, right around the Sherry Library.
Yes, ma'am.
And there have been a bunch of people falling because the concrete go up. When you're walking, you gotta really walk, watch yourself because it's not gonna trip.
Right, and, if I had to guess, with all those pine trees around there, you start getting roots that want to bust up when I go out there tomorrow, I will also walk that track and see if there are any hazards that we can at least identify until we can get something to be done with those. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm gonna throw out a war on it, but what's the future of the Miller Park tennis courts shed? What's Tom Sherry talking about converting AUX or what?
Well, the issue is, no, they are. And we are actually in the process of getting them removed. We're working with administration right now to look, just totally going in there and taking it out. Supposedly there is a spring or something that is underneath that court, and they had to put so much concrete in there we were actually talking about it earlier today. And so as soon as they poured it, it wasn't 6 months later, it was all cracking. So what we need to do is go in there and remove it and identify maybe where those areas are and possibly build something maybe a little smaller, not as large as the tennis courts, but maybe put a few pickleball courts, but they may have to be, kind of maybe out toward the pond a little bit more or something like that. Because as you know that ditch right there between the tennis courts and the road where people like to, of course, mud ride and all that, you know, that constantly stays wet right there.
Yeah, but one time, I know it might be spring, but one time that was all landfill food softball.
So there's no telling what could be under there. And, you know, I think the only way we'll really be able to assess that is once we remove all that and can kind of see, you know, what our options are going forward with that right there. Yes, ma'am. You're welcome. Yes, sir.
You've been to the dog park recently?
The dog park at Hiller Park or the dog park out at Pops Ferry?
Library.
No, sir, I have not.
Okay. When you speak of the pickleball courts, that's great. That has an economic impact. Are you aware that every day somebody gets off the interstate that's traveling with their dog with their animal and stops because we have a dog park? Now, I know it's not a Buc-ee's with 200 pumps and a C-store, but that's the economic impact. I would not, the only thing they've done out there in 8 years is pour that concrete pad there.
Right.
That's the only thing they've done in 8 years. That's inexcusable. Anything that has an economic impact here in the city or benefits the community as a whole should get top priority. And your parks are deplorable. Your parks are deplorable. I'm not sitting here and tell you that.
Right. And I mean, there are things that we are trying to improve on with those. And the dog park, you know, I'll get with Councilman Deming, and we can look at some different options on what we can do to improve.
It's not just
Whether-
the dog park. I mean, the condition of Miguez Park, where many Biloxians learn to play ball, deteriorated so badly that recently the Biloxi Bombers adopted the park.
Right.
That shouldn't have happened.
And, you know, one of the things was, you know, when that complex was built, that's where most of all the play migrated to. You know, it did. Everybody started playing out at the A.J. Holloway complex, and that's where the efforts were really put forward to. And, you know, like you said, though, with now that possibly being shut down for renovations, you know, there are other areas that we're going to have to look at where people can go. Like you said, the Bombers took over Miguez. Savaro, we're looking at, you know, getting the lights replaced there, hopefully relatively soon. Hiller Park, we're in works of trying to get, you know, some dirt there to level those fields out. So we are working slowly, I understand, but trying to get some of those parks back up to playable conditions where they can go out.
Well, I can tell you, every day there's a car without static plates that stops at that dog park.
Yes, sir.
And it is an economic impact, okay?
Yes, sir.
It has an economic impact. Anything that draws people off the interstate to stop in your city, where they buy fuel, they buy ice, whatever, has an economic impact. And it's disgusting the way that park has been maintained.
And when I go out, I'm going out to Potts Ferry to look at the splash pad, look at the walking track. I will make a point to go across the street, take pictures, investigate, and get with our people to see what type of improvements we can make.
Take a picture of car tax when you're out there.
Yes, sir. Anything else? Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I'll tell you, with the dog park, it is tough to get people in the council and the city to want to spend money on the dog park, but he's right, it does have an impact. It's one of the most used parks. People take their kids every day. When I say kids, I mean their fur kids or fur babies, right? They do. It's a very well-trafficked and used dog park. And there was a gentleman, there was a kid that was at City Hall, and she was given an award because they had to do a public service program that helped the city. And one of the kids on that panel, he said he was going to do something